Welcome everybody back to Spin Rack. Today I'm here with Petey and Cal. How you like that intro? Today we're talking about Superman 22. Okay? So here we have some very important things that happen. I'm gonna let Petey take it from here. It's a John Byrne comic, unfortunately. But hey, Petey,
I can't stand them.
lay it out, baby.
Well, this is that was part 3 of the Supergirl saga. So this was Superman 21. Then there's an issue of Adventures of Superman, and then Superman 22, where the ultimate happened. Now, this is the last story in Byrne's run, and this is one of the few that's tying into an earlier story, which was the Superboy saga. And in the Superboy saga, they introduced the pocket universe to explain sort of where Superboy and all of his folklore came from,
and kill him off,
and exit that character. But when that ended, in my head, I was like, "Wait a second, I think I got a Zod." In my head, as a kid, and I thinking to myself as a writer, it's like, I can bring Zod in. I can slip a Zod into the story, into my own story. And then a little while later, Supergirl shows up in, I guess it was maybe issue 18 or 19. She shows up again with the Kents. And this is the reveal of that entire story. So in Superman 21, Superman runs into this Supergirl who looks the same, but she has different powers. And she sort of has this chameleon effect where she turns into Lana Lang. And that adds a lot of questions to Superman. And then Superman, they have a brief fight because there's some differences that Supergirl sees, and the Superman saying, "This is not Superboy. This is, I'm not sure who this is." So they get into a fight. Superman figures out what it is, and this Supergirl is from the Pocket Universe. And ultimately she takes him to this other world. And we get a glimpse of it, but it's basically this dome city on a barren Earth. So when we get to the Adventures of Superman, the only thing that's left is Smallville. Everything else is destroyed. And this is actually, the next issue is actually taking the Silver Age characters. Now, all the Silver Age characters are way more powerful than the stuff that was going on in the late 80s. And this is taking their powers and pushing them to the limit, well beyond, what happened to the Man of Tomorrow. Like that, they sort of pushed the level of what they can do, where they actually, the criminals from the Phantom Zone actually have destroyed the planet, and they're doing stuff that's well beyond we've seen in comics, and they're just really ruthless. They're like really pushing them as far as they can go. And we see this is the second time we've seen a good Lex Luthor, because this Lex Luthor is now the last savior trying to, for humanity, and the Kryptonians have killed basically everybody. So they bring in Superman for help, and the second issue is sort of like filling in the blanks, what happened, how Lex Luthor allowed these criminals to get free, and then they took over the world, and then when they got tired of fighting and saying, "This is going to take forever, let's just destroy the planet, and then we'll get rid of these humans." And this was all that's left. So,
And don't forget Lex Luthor changed.
Well, this is the point. He still has his hair. It's still a Silver Age Lex Luthor, so Lex Luthor doesn't lose his hair, doesn't hate Superman, so he's a positive character. But he's not an alternate universe character, so there's still elements of Lex Luthor in him, because he would become the bad guy that comes later. So ultimately in this issue, which for me is Superman 22, it happened very quickly, but the story sort of develops to some small elements that we need to see this in this story. They have a brief fight. Some of the leftover heroes that are just human, like Hal Jordan, Bruce Wayne, Oliver Queen, they get killed off really quickly. Superman, it's fun to see, because we know Superman is not as powerful as these guys, but he's handling himself, he's doing his best. Supergirl kind of is out of the fight, Luthor's almost out, and there's one bit that Luthor didn't let anyone know that he tells Superman and gives Superman an edge. And of course they're able to stop the guys, but now he's dealing with the planet, the 5 billion people that have been killed by these guys. And Superman is the last person here on this dying world. So he decides he has to place himself as basically the deputy or the marshal of the town, or the law of this town, and he takes them out. He uses gold kryptonite on them, and they die, and he comes back to Earth. And one of the things that they faulted Byrne, Superman's going to be going home to his parents, and he did go home from time to time, but he never really talked with Pa and Ma about what he was struggling with. He'd hang out with them, kind of relax, and then go off and save the world. So Byrne leaves and Superman goes, and we had that last shot of Superman flying in the air, and Byrne inked this issue, sort of his goodbye to the character for a little while. And I don't think, I want everyone to get in, but I'm saying this thing had a little bit of controversy in Amazing Heroes, but I think later in the 90s when Peter David talked about it in his But I Digress, it started to snowball into this big, huge thing. Now in the comics, the
What
team
big huge thing?
that Superman kills somebody, and Superman has this code of not killing, and Byrne went against that, even though they say in the early history he did, allow people like cannon fodder, and like a Die Hard movie, somebody falls off a cliff and like what's the name doesn't go and save them. That sort of thing would happen in comics. But when after that happened, the team after Byrne sort of played out some of the things. There was only a little bit that Byrne was going to do, which is similar, but obviously they went and did their own stuff with it. So basically, the fans were like, "Oh, they dealt with him killing these people, and they did it in a logical way. He had a reaction against it. He's not going to do that anymore." It was solid. But then when Peter David did his thing, when around Image time, saying, "Hey, Byrne did this," and it started to build. There's this big snowball from Amazing Heroes to Peter David to the internet to now. It's just like, how could he do this? But ultimately, rereading the story, it was good going back to see the Superman that I used to read when I was a kid or like a late teen, and I liked how he developed the story. It wasn't a story going into, because I was like, this is another backstory thing, and I don't really need. And what I want to see is a big long saga, and it wasn't really that long a saga. So I was like, am I getting it? But the way they approached it, I really liked. I was okay with it. I didn't necessarily need him to kill these guys, but ultimately, I was thinking about doing a Zod story with those guys from the Pocket Universe. So you got to get rid of them.
Well, I mean,
and I hand it back over.
So I read the story, and I guess I had not read it when I was younger, and I read it, and I was totally discombobulated. I said, "Is this Zack Snyder again? Is this what John Byrne is doing? Is this why he set up this whole new Pocket Universe? Is this why he did all this stuff so that he would be able to show Superman killing?" And I'm like, I'm not sure. I really, tell you the truth, I was really taken out of it.
Hold on, just keep talking. So I'm going to get back to that point. But yeah.
So I was taken out of, it wasn't what I expected. It really threw me for a loop. And it hurt my idea of what Superman should be. And look, already from the show, I'm not a huge John Byrne fan, but this actually brought it lower for me than I thought it would be. You know what I'm trying to say? So that's my take on this whole story. But other than Lex Luthor, it was good. So
wait a second.
So Lex Luthor, I thought, was a positive thing. He tried to be there for
I was almost with you. Okay.
One of my favorite characters.
You only like villains.
I don't like villains. I like good guys too. I've told you that many a time.
You like the good guys who act like villains. That's why you like Batman.
You know what, Cal? I'm taking it on to you.
Batman was also a fully deputized hero. One of my favorite stories, Origin of Batman, where
after the first year,
after he stalks, he stalks the guy who
drops that guy in acid. Then he
in the first year he had a gun on the sidearm. He had a gun right there, and he told people he
threw somebody off. I think he flipped some guy off the building.
Oh,
he didn't
man.
even try to help him. I think after they saw the bodies, they were like, okay, we're gonna pin this on you.
He was a clear vigilante. The police didn't even like him.
Gentlemen, let's bring it back to Superman 22. Cal, what do you take on this?
It's a horrible story. Okay, you have to read this. You really have to go back to the Superboy saga, because one of the problems that they had when they rebooted Superman was they had decided that he didn't have this career as Superboy. They didn't. A lot of the guys found it unwieldy, and they didn't want to be bothered with it. The trouble was that because they didn't have the Superboy, the period with him as Superboy, this affected the Legion of Superheroes, and it's also affected Superman to an extent, because they were like, well, so what was he doing at this time? Did he have powers when he was a kid? Did he not? And that was always this nebulous area, and that kept on for a while. So he doesn't have these things. So some of the things that would have already been cemented, like Superman doesn't kill, and these are the reasons why, some people would have thought, this is still an open area for me to actually, go, and develop. Now, it would have been a lot harder to have a story where Superboy kills somebody. Like, you're gonna let 12-year-old kill someone? Okay, but as a grown man, it's something else. And then people always play around with it. Oh, we can do character development with them, which I always thought was malarkey. But then we get into the story, and see, we already knew that this Superman had already been to the Pocket Universe, or rather, he'd already been to the Pocket Universe, and they knew he was not as powerful as Superboy. Okay, they knew he was not as powerful as Superboy, but they were still coming back. This is Lex Luthor now. He was still like, well, let's go get him and maybe he can help us out. And the problem I had with that was that Lex Luthor was the one who released the Phantom Zone criminals, but also knew where was the kryptonite that would have been able to stop them. All they needed to do was get close to these guys with the kryptonite. That would have been the end of it. But, and Petey plays on this pretty well. This is still Lex Luthor from that original universe where there is still something fundamentally wrong, something fundamentally something fundamentally sinister about him at the end of the day, because he wanted to be the one to stop them. So his obsession that would have been for Superman translates into this obsession with, I got to stop these guys. It's really hard to swallow because people are dying left and right. And then finally, when he dies and he knows he can't do anything else, that's when he tells Superman, which is convenient, of course. So, okay, fine. Superman gets out the kryptonite, the gold kryptonite. They're powerless now. There's nobody else around. Okay, everybody else is dead. You know, he's got them walled up in like a makeshift prison. There's enough atmosphere. The only other person who survived was the Matrix that would become Supergirl later on in some stories later on. But I was looking at it, and there are all these contrivances that have to lead in order for Superman to kill these guys. Okay, for me, it's one contrivance after another. But the one that really got there was that they're alive. They're powerless. Gold kryptonite, okay? You don't get your powers back.
That's not how comics work.
Okay,
you're right.
You don't get your powers back. And then
that way.
The other problem I had with it was that, okay, these guys are like, well, gold kryptonite, even if they brought them to the other universe, they were saying that the kryptonite of this universe doesn't affect him. The Pocket Universe kryptonites didn't affect Superman. That's how he was able to use the gold kryptonite on them. So anything that he would have found in his universe wouldn't have necessarily been actionable on them. You know, that was another issue I had. They were like, well, if they get there, what if they get their powers back? Oh, what? That's a bunch of what if and everything of that nature.
The problem is, I get what you're saying, but as writers go, this is wiping out this thing of bringing out characters that were. I mean, this is
didn't stop them. They brought back the same. They did
not the.
They brought Superboy Prime back, and he pretty much laid waste to every. He pretty much did everything that those guys could have done.
That shows that they shouldn't have brought him and bring him back as a villain. That's one of the things.
The other problem I had was in the Pocket Universe, the only hero was Superboy. If they brought them back, okay, you still had the reason why they were able to defeat them is because they still had a host of other heroes at the end of the day. Okay, these are people, you got the Spectre there. You're telling me that these guys wouldn't? Like, no, it's just ridiculous for him to kill them, and they had to retcon it because when he initially kills them, he's acting as judge, jury, and executioner. Okay, so this is just murder he's doing at this point. Whereas later on, they were like, well, he was concerned that maybe they would find a way back to the Pocket Universe. I was like, how are they going to find a way back? If he leaves them there long enough, they're dead. There's not going to find any way back.
The problem is that him bringing them back, him leaving on the planet, it still leads to, it's sort of like, it's not the same.
He could have left them in the Pocket Universe with their powers. They would have never found a way back.
They would have found a way back.
No,
a writer would have come along and said, let me try to
No, that's saying somebody would have written a story to actually bring them back. I could bring them back now if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay. But the thing is, killing them doesn't mean that somebody couldn't, utilize them or actualize them. I'm saying in story. I like to stay in story because that means you have to craft this story to the point that when somebody poses questions, your story may not necessarily answer them, but it's durable enough to withstand that sort of questioning. And that was one of the problems I had with this. With the questions I would ask, there's no answer for it. It just went on. And the worst of it is that when he kills them, he decides, I'm going to do this because I believe this is the right thing. But then they're like, of course it's wrong. Then he goes back and he suffers he goes into this split personality for the better part of a year-long storyline. He exiles himself. And there is some redemption in terms of story.
That's the thing when people are saying, well, okay, this is a fix and this fix works and I didn't really like it, but I like this. It's like, it's what was it? The
fix is unnecessary if you don't kill them in the first place.
I'm thinking of saying this works. Yeah, that would be one angle. But the angle that the fans, I think that The problem is that being a story that was just a story, and where we got, and that's why I was talking about the comic code part of us being like the comic code, is that we as fans now decide, all right, we need to go to these stories and act like what should have been just editorially removed, instead of saying, okay, this is fair enough to say this is a bad story, I didn't like it. Right. But then what you had said, that's the point of saying that the reasoning for why, like the fans, like this is the reason why he did it, and he wanted to do this, and he wanted Superman to just kill, because that's the same way Peter David was going and saying, I just want him to kill because I'm this.
Well, I mean,
and his
run snowballs
ended,
into a big thing, which is like
I heard different stuff that Byrne. This was like his last story, and
right.
He was unhappy, so he decided to stick it to them with the story. There's a whole bunch of different stuff.
But how does DC allow?
But that doesn't. No, that doesn't matter. For me, a lot of that stuff doesn't matter because again, just stick with the story. There's more that if you really want to like hammer something, you can hammer the story all day long. At the end of the day, it's not. The story itself. The story itself became durable because they decided. I mean, to the credit, they decided they weren't just going to ignore it. Okay, they decided they weren't just. They decided, okay, we're actually going to go somewhere with this, and try